Thank you, Ann, for having me. My name is Manny Martinez. I'm with GPA. Looking at a little bit of a slide here that I kind of found appropriate, a template for this presentation today, because I felt that preparing for a WMS is a lot like traveling uphill. There's a lot of work. Sometimes the road can be a little treacherous, but when you get to the summit, it's totally worth it. The gains are absolutely worth the work. So there's a lot of topics that can be considered when discussing implementing WMS. I decided to focus my attention today on two of them: the infrastructure component and product labeling, mainly because there isn't really a whole lot of data out there on how to go about putting some of those things into production. A little bit about our company. GPA has been around since 1940, and we're a market leader in the sale of specialty substrates to the print market. Substrates are specialty papers, films, vinyls that get printed on and are used at point of sale material. Some of the examples I included here are printing on substrates that can go onto walls, electrically static. You can peel them off, you can reposition them. You've probably seen these at like doctor's offices or bars. Printing on silver foil boards that help pop out a lot of color, mainly again just for point of sale references. We do a lot of ID badges and key cards for hotels. So we're located in 4 states across the U.S. We run Macola ES. We have about 4,000 active SKUs. So some of our challenges before we actually got onto the WMS, where we had no real accurate view of inventory. We had what the system had, inventory level, and then a physical inventory. They were so out of sync with each other. The ordering processes was really fragmented. We never knew where an order was within the system or at what point it was in. And then our physical inventories, we did them at the end of the year, and it often took like 3 days to complete. It was just kind of a mess. So when I talk about infrastructure, I'm speaking about wireless access points, the handheld terminals, the servers that the WMS sits on, etc., to describe the whole environment needed to facilitate communication from the guy standing at the bin right into the integration into your ERP. So my first piece of advice on working in the infrastructure is find a consultant. Partnering up with a good consultant will advise you. A good consultant will actually advise you on site surveys, what type of guns you need. They'll offer valuable services such as staging, warranty support, and advise you on device management software if needed. There's so much information in this environment that it would really take a lot of time to try to get your hands around all of that and to figure out what's best for you. So partner up with someone and bringing them in will save you a lot of time and money. So let me tell you a little bit about a site survey and what are some advantages with bringing someone in the savings and the way you'll get things right the first time. So depending on the size of your warehouse, the height of the racks, the material on your shelves determines how strong of a signal you need in your warehouse and amount of wireless access points you should be able to install. I don't think anything would be worse than going through a whole project and finding out you don't have the right coverage issues or your guns don't work in a certain area or that the equipment you got wasn't spec'd out properly. So what's a site survey? Site survey basically is, so here's our warehouse. It's about 75,000 square feet. Here's our rack area. Here's our office area. A site survey, what they do is they come in and they'll take a ambient noise level. They'll map the whole warehouse and tell you what kind of noise you have coming into the warehouse from your forklifts, background noise, doors, etc. And all those factors actually, decide in the placement of your guns and tell you, or the wireless access points, where you should put things for the best coverage possible. All of these things are sound and they bounce off radio waves, so there was a lot more in depth than I actually had considered. They also do things like take a look at any other wirelesses that are in your neighborhood or in your area that are bleeding into your environment that would actually prevent or cross-reference some of the signal that you're trying to generate. So by doing all that, what they end up doing is then they come back and they'll tell you where your placements of your access points should be, what kind of hardware that's best for the dimensions and the size of, and considering all that ambient noise and all those variables. And what they end up giving you is something that looks like this. So here's our warehouse, and here's actually with these 4 access points in, what the saturation looks like. We have very little to no weak spots. Matter of fact, we have none, because anything above or below, like I believe anything above 85 will give you some problems. And what we're seeing is we have complete saturation everywhere, no problems with the guns. They work extremely well, and there's really no weak spots. Another thing the consultant will help you determine is which kind of guns you should be using. It's handheld terminals. We happen to use an MC9090 gun by Motorola. There's some other options out there. I believe Intermic and Honeywell make a variety of guns. And based on your budget and also based on that infrastructure, will kind of determine, and also based on the needs of your individuals that are actually doing the picking, will tell you which style of guns. They come with triggers, they come without, they come some that you can strap on your forearm, put on your finger, etc. So a consultant will help you with some of those. Another interesting topic that you should probably consider is device management. So we have about 30 guns spread out amongst 4 warehouses, and some of the challenges we face is that sometimes these guns go out, they lose the configuration. What's the best way to kind of to get them back up and running? And configuring a gun from scratch actually probably takes about an hour. With device management software, you're actually able to load images on there, and I can get a gun that's down, fully functional in probably 3 minutes and put them back into work. The guns will lose their configuration. Sometimes the batteries, the CMOS will wear out, so you'll see some of these things. And again, depending on the amount of guns you have out there, the location of some of these, we can push these images remotely across our network to the other sites. Will determine whether or not you should look into a device management software. If you only have limited amount of guns, 4 or 5 warehouse guns, then it may not be advantageous to you. But in our environment, it was recommended. We looked at it, and we were very, very glad that we actually kept with it. The particular solution we use is a Motorola solution. Let's see. So in summary, on the infrastructure and the site survey, why it's important to choose a consultant, I think that they'll help you build a reliable, robust network that'll offer the best coverage possible. It'll get you the right devices for your company. They offer value-added services where they'll configure them for you. They'll provide warranty service. They'll stage them for you. And they'll help you build a device management system that actually lets you put those guns into production, get them up and going quickly. They build all the software for you. So next thing I wanted to talk about briefly is product labeling and barcoding. So some of the questions to consider when you're thinking about barcoding your warehouse. We had no barcodes. We had just the way we used to do it was pretty ancient. We actually would we had printed pages of labels with each item on it sitting, right below the bin where the item would sit. We'd actually peel those off and stick them on. It was crazy. So some of the things that you need to consider is we went from that environment to a completely labeled barcode bin serial lot system with WiSys pretty quickly. And one of the things you have to consider is whether you want to use UPCs or SKUs. What your label requirements are going to look like. What kind of software are you going to use to build those labels and the barcodes. So UPC or SKU. A UPC is probably the most common. Well, the UPC-A is the most common, and it's a 12-digit numeric number that's assigned to trade items and are scannable at point of sales. They stay with items all the time, and they're picked up via retail well everywhere. They usually look like this. I'm sure you've all seen them before. Sorry for the pixelation there, but they're a 12-digit code with a checksum at the back, letting you know you've got the right item. And again, all retail systems use them. So depending on what your business is and what you're going to be doing with your products, are they out? Do you want people to be able to scan them? It's because of that UPC that you're actually able to take those apps on your Droid and iPhones and scan UPCs and pull them up from a general database and get the product information on them. SKUs are a little different. They're not unique, where UPCs are unique. They're not unique. Anyone can come up with the exact same SKU. You can have a SKU that someone else right across from you has, and they're usually used just for internal barcoding and inventory, and they're an 8-digit, primarily alphanumeric, and they look a little bit like this. There's some variations on there. You can have numbers, letters, everything in there. So as far as label requirements, our label requirements, we're a paper business. We deal in reams, cartons, skids. There's some variations on that stuff. So you have to figure out what your label requirements are and how you're going to go about creating labels to fit those specifications. So another important aspect is software. There's a lot of out-of-box software that's going to help you build barcodes, or also along with the database, with the pertinent information that goes with your barcodes that are integratable into your database, and that will bring information out onto the labels for you. Some of the most common are bartender, bcoder. There's some custom stuff that you can use that requires developers. One of them is Crystal Reports. Because of our complex kind of need for our labels and the data we're putting on there and when we're not putting them in and when we are putting them in, we decided to use Crystal Reports, and we have an in-house database guy that's really good at Crystal Reports. So if you're looking for extreme flexibility in your labels, this is probably the way to go. Another thing to help us, remember, we were going from a no labeling barcoding in our system to complete labeled system, labeled warehouse. What we ended up doing also is we required our vendors to label per our specs. We sent them samples along with their barcodes and their UPCs, and then we also created a portal for vendors that didn't have the expertise or knowledge to barcode. We ran into that a little bit. What I'd like to show you is just a quick demonstration on how we built some of those. So here's a label that we actually built in Crystal Reports. This is the actual development where everything sits. There's logos, there's logic in here that tells you when it's this, do this, turn this on, turn this off. But basically, and here's our database fields that it goes out into our Macola ES system and brings back into the label. What we did is we used this Crystal Report viewer, and we put this on all the packaging personnel, the material handlers that do all the labeling, and we gave them this interface. And basically what they do is they pop in an item in, they scan in or enter a lot number, how many labels. We created this parameterized interface that lets you put in anything you need and then generate a label. So there's what our labels look like. This happens to be a carton label. We have, so instead of going back to the printer like I used in an example previously with all this printed material, we created on the fly, but what we asked the printer was, hey, give us just labels, die-cut labels, meaning this particular one is broken up into 2 halves, and it would have printed 2 labels on one sheet, and they peel right off, and you can slap them right onto the boxes and label all your material. So instead of having all this inventory and these pre-built labels, you're building them on the fly as needed. And then one other thing that we did was we got a little bit of pushback from some of our vendors on, well, you know, it's a lot of work, and because what we were requiring is we didn't want our guys to sit there and have to label everything that was coming in. So we went to our vendors with a clear-cut focus saying, hey, we want you to label for us, and this is how they should look. You know, we're doing a lot of business with you, so they come through the door, they're perfectly fine. And we got a little bit of pushback. Some of our vendors are actually really good about it, and they had to, it wasn't like we were asking something crazy. They've seen these requests before, so they were able to do them. Some of our smaller vendors actually had some hard time with it, and so what we decided to do was create a portal through the web where they can log in and find and get this information themselves. All they have to do now is just get the paper. And so here's what the portal kind of looks like for a vendor out there. And they can pick what are they building, reams, cartons. They can pick the item. They can enter their lot number. Looks pretty familiar, just like the last one. How many labels? They run a PDF, open it up, and there's the reams with all of our information in it. They have this paper already pre-cut. We gave them the specs on it, and now all they have to do is just peel it and stick it on. So that helped tremendously. Actually, there's nothing that comes through the door now that is not labeled in our environment, and that helps us always maintain, clear-cut accuracy in our inventory and our labels, and we just know where everything's at all the time. So, summary, what this ended up, what implementing WiSys WMS happened, what it did for us. It gave us a fully labeled warehouse where we're able to accurately know where our inventory was on a bin lot level across 4 different warehouses, and a flexibility response to customer requests. And that resulted in us being able to, over a 2-year period, we reduced our inventory by $1 million. Remember that physical count problem of 3 days? Our cycle counts are done in waves, meaning every week a row or 2 are hit at every warehouse. And it resulted at a last audit, industry average is a 1.5% accuracy variable. That's okay with most auditors. We had a 0.045, so less than 0.5%. Now you turn that into dollars and you see some real results. We sit on $10 million worth of inventory now, and at 1.5, that's roughly, what, $150,000 versus now a 0.045% discrepancy is $45,000. So there's $105K there just saved just in our inventory and our accuracy. So it was well worth the implementation, and we reached the summit relatively unscathed.